All right. Hey, why don't we begin? We've got a great crowd here. Some people in their cars. Pam, you're such a warrior. Thank you. And other people on their phones, other people walking around their houses. It's great to see you all. My name is Simmons Bunton, and I am the editor-in-chief of Terrain.org, and I'm going to kick things off. So, howdy from Tucson, Arizona, where I am in the multicultural heart of the Sonoran Desert, and it was 101 degrees today. So autumn sounds fun. Welcome to our first online reading of the fall, what we might call our autumnal equinox reading, or kind of close to it anyway. Whatever you call the day, I'm so glad that you are spending your Monday evening with us. Let me just admit somebody. There we go. Back to my doc. Okay, so there are some thanks I want to give out this evening. First, thank you for joining us. Second, thanks to our host, Elizabeth Dodd, who is the Terrain.org nonfiction editor and will be in turn introducing our readers this evening. And thanks to those readers for joining us, Lauren Camp and Kate Wisel and Leonora Simonovis. Super excited to have you all here. I want to thank the Michael Donnelly Faculty Fund at Kansas State University for making this reading possible and specifically for helping to fund our readers this evening. And again, I want to thank you, our audience. You really are the most beautiful audience I've ever seen. So thanks for that. Hey, if your connection becomes slow, you may want to turn off your video. In all cases, please remain muted, but you're welcome to post your questions and other celebratory positive feedback in chat, and I'm sure we'll open it up to audio questions during the Q&A that follows the conversation. Okay, we're recording this and all readings and conversations, and we'll make those available from the Terrain.org website in our events section, as well as from the YouTube channel, and we'll do that real soon. We'd love it if you would officially follow our YouTube channel so that we can get up beyond, I don't know, 120 or whatever followers we have now. And I'm just going to post that link right there. Don't leave us, but if you want to follow us, that is the link there. We're not live streaming on YouTube, however. It's just here on Zoom. So this is our fourth online reading of the year, though we've had a couple, I must say, really terrific in-person readings in Seattle and Portland. We'll have another one in-person reading that's going to be fantastic in Kansas City at AWP in February. We'll have one in Tucson in early January. So if you would like to host an in-person Terrain.org reading, you know, we have folks all over the place, and that would be great fun. Because why? We're celebrating our 25th anniversary all this year, and maybe beyond 1 year, because that's the way we roll at Terrain.org. Thank you. I love that enthusiasm. Way to go. All right. And yet our next online reading hasn't yet been scheduled, or announced, I should say. But once it is, details will be available on Terrain.org, as well as our Facebook page, and announced via our e-newsletter, of which one went out today. And if you're on the e-newsletter list, you hopefully saw that and found much to love in there. You can subscribe right there to our online e-newsletter, which we send out about every couple weeks or so. We might send a few more in the fall, and you'll see why after I give you some announcements. So those announcements and a few other words about Terrain.org, the world's first and longest publishing online journal of the place, as I mentioned, celebrating 25 years of publishing this year. Wow. Okay. The reading period for the second annual Sowell Emerging Writers Prize, with a prize of $1,000 in publication by Texas Tech University Press for a full book of poetry this year, is now open through November 15th. There is a $25 entry fee. I want to let you know that this year we will be announcing the 5 finalists in January, and the winner will be announced by the end of February. So get those poetry manuscripts on themes about and related to the natural world in, if you have published no more than one book in any genre, you're eligible. So, and let me see, here's the link for that. You can find all your submission information for the Sowell Emerging Writers Prize right there. And the first winner of that book is in the works right now. We're super excited about it. That was nonfiction. Okay, so super excited about this. I guess this is year number 2 of a lot of great things that started last year, because it's our second annual online auction and fall fundraiser, and it's coming. It will be held or be open from October 19th to November 12th. No link to share just yet, but we will as that gets closer. This year, We have auction items that include a handmade quilt and poetry book in Idaho Whiskey by C. Marie Furman, The Great Cicada Convergent Sound Walk with David Rothenberg, Newport Bay Harbor Boat Ride with Andy Gottlieb, a hike in Grand Manan with Allison Deming, tour of Tucson Sustainable Community of Savannah with me, a birding trip at Bosque del Apache with Renata Golden, who's joining us this evening, a walk on Outer Cape Cod with Elizabeth Bradfield, a $500 gift certificate to Unbound Merino Sustainable Clothing by Kurt Caswell, a down-home barbecue with Sean Hill and Alan G. You can bet I will be bidding on that. A Cascadia Field Guide collection featuring the King Salmon original watercolor painting by Justin Gibbons, as well as a signed copy of Cascadia Field Guide, and a broadside of Cascadian Cento, and even some more in that. And poetry critiques by Allison Adele Hedgecote, Elizabeth Jacobson, and Suzanne Fishkorn, probably a couple more folks. Nonfiction critiques by Doug Carlson and me, yours truly. Online writing classes with or by at least Pam Houston and Janice Ray. Poem, essay, story reviews by others, original artwork, publisher book sets, signed books by a variety of acclaimed authors, limited edition broadsides, but wait, there's more. Terrain.org hats and shirts and other gear, and much more. Whew, that is going to be awesome, and you want to bid on all of those prizes. Again, that's October 19th to November 12th, and we'll post, is that right? No, through November 2nd, my bad. October 19th to November 2nd is 2 weeks. Renata's probably texting me right now about that. And we'll post information closer to those dates at terrain.org, on social media, and in our e-newsletter. You don't want to miss this opportunity for something amazing, while, of course, helping us out, because we are a nonprofit organization, and all volunteer, by the way. Oh, wait, that's my next bullet point. Of course, you don't have to wait until the online auction and fundraiser to donate. Terrain Publishing, which is terrain.org's parent organization, is a 501c3 tax-exempt organization, and will gladly and kindly and happily accept your donation at any time. And let me just put that right there, because that's the way nonprofits work. All right, now let's turn to tonight's reading, the real reason you're all here. And again, that will be followed by a Q&A opportunity. I'll be posting terrain.org and book links in the chat in support of our readers this evening. But if you missed those, or you want to find other books by our contributors, hop on over to our bookshop page at bookshop.org/shop/terrain.org, or find the link under About in the terrain.org website navigation menu, or check your chat. Okay. Also, be sure to post your thoughts and questions in the chat as we look forward to an engaging conversation following the readings. In fact, I've told our readers this evening that you, in addition to being the most beautiful audience we've ever had, are the most engaged audience we've ever had. So no pressure, but stick around. Finally, hey, thanks for joining us. Now, it is my pleasure to introduce our host this evening, one of the loveliest people you could ever meet, or hike atop Mount St. Helens with, or work closely on an essay with, or share a drink with, or change the world with, or, as you'll soon see, have host your online reading. And that is Elizabeth Dodd. Elizabeth Dodd's work explores relationships between the human and more than human worlds. Her most recent publication is Dear America, Letters of Hope, Habitat, Defiance, and Democracy, co-edited with Simmons Bunton and Derek Sheffield. She is the author of 3 collections of creative nonfiction: Horizon's Lens, In the Mind's Eye, which is winner of the Association for the Study of Literature and Environment's Best Book Award, and Prospect, Journeys in Landscapes, winner of the William Rockhill Nelson Award. Her poetry collections are Archetypal Light and Like Memory Caverns, winner of the Elmer Holmes Bobst Award. She has been a resident at artist colonies, including Yaddo, the Writers' Colony at Derry Hollow, and at a research station, the aforementioned Mount St. Helens, and a national monument, Chaco Culture National Historical Park. At terrain.org, she is the nonfiction editor. She was born in Colorado and grew up in Southeast Ohio. She lives in the Flint Hill region of East Central Kansas and teaches at Kansas State University, where she is a distinguished professor of English. So Elizabeth, thank you so much for shepherding us into autumn with what I know will be a wonderful reading and discussion with Lauren and Kate and Leonora. Take it away.
Thank you, wonderful Simmons, who makes so many splendid things happen on this glorious earth and who connects splendid people in his circle. I'm delighted to be able to host this event and am really excited to listen to all of our readers. I'm going to introduce them just before they read. Please, as Simmons was saying, put questions that you might have as we move along in the chat so that we don't forget them, and we can have some spirited conversation at the end. Our first reader this evening is Leonora Simonovis, and she is the currents editor at terrain.org. And I was so thrilled when we first reached out to Leonora to invite her to join the staff. She wrote to me and asked me about the kinds of interactions that we might have, which was a terrific question since we're spread all over the country, you know, and we can't just walk down the hall or have an accidental conversation in the restroom. And so I thought that was a wonderful question. Clearly, she was thinking about curating community, which I think is something that Simmons has led us in so well. So Leonora will be reading to us first. Leonora Simonovis is a Venezuelan-American poet, educator, and scholar living on the unceded territory of the Kumuyayi Nation in San Diego, California. She holds a PhD in Hispanic literatures from Washington University in St. Louis and an MFA in creative writing from Antioch University in Los Angeles. Currently, she is a professor of Latin American literature and culture, as well as creative writing in Spanish at the University of San Diego. And in addition to working with terrain.org, she is a reviews editor for EcoTheo. Her poetry manuscript study of The Raft was selected by final judge Sherwin Bitsui as the winner of the 2021 Colorado Prize for Poetry, and it received honorable mention in the 2022 International Latino Book Awards. Her work has appeared in Verse Daily, Rivermouth Review, Kweli Journal, Tinderbox Poetry Journal, Diode, Inverted Syntax, and Arkansas International, among others. Leonora has received fellowships from VONA, Women Who Submit, and the Poetry Foundation. Will you please join me in applauding for Leonora Simonovis?
Thank you, Elizabeth, for that beautiful introduction. I still remember the first time I met you in person at AWP, and you were like, wait, you can't leave yet. I have to say hi in person. And thank you, Simmons, for the invitation. I'm really happy to be here and also sharing this space with Lauren and Kate. I'm looking forward to listening to them read. So I'm going to read some poems from Study of the Raft today, and maybe I'll read a couple of new things at the end. And I've been reading from Study of the Raft for the last couple of years, and I always tell people I get bored reading the same poems, so I try to make up new little sets to read. So today I'm going to read what I called companion poems. And these are poems that I read in response to each other. Sometimes there's two, sometimes three, sometimes more. So I'll start with the first poem in the book, which is called Maps. In the beginning, we were yellow, brown, blue, black stalks, teeth clattering for wind, ground with mortar and pestle scattered into ocean. No snake in this story, nobody to tempt an exile. On the seventh day, the rivers bruised like drum skin. We are children of corn and fish bones, cleaved by starlight and spit, thousands of years tall and still untamed. Our homes taken, we dream the pestle as mortar. Our mothers hip carry the embers of dawn, their hands yield the sweetest dough. Cradle our faces, brush crumbs of our lips, we eat so we remember how bodies are sharpened, wrought. We rinse stories out of the sea that was river. They shapeshift into kernels, right themselves in orbit. For a moment, words hover at the edge of our consciousness. For a moment, We are a sketch of our own making. And the companion for this one is Legends. And it starts with an epigraph. Guaraira Repano is the indigenous name of the mountain that surrounds the valley of Caracas. 1857, renamed Avila, the mountain embraces the city growing on its hem, nursing it to life. Caracas, whoever summits the highest peak claims it. Boundaries, stones scattered over the early treads of tapers. Gazing, through a piece of X-ray film, we remember the story of a conquistador to be sacrificed. History, he predicted a solar eclipse. The Mayas offered his heart to the sun. This is not taught in school. School, abuelas counting beads on a rosary, praying their nietos remember a shell is also a body. Remember, to serve coffee in tiny plastic cups, con leche, marrón, guayoyo, negrito, guarapo. Tongue, one sip scorching the tip, that space where words are forgotten and recovered. Words, salvaged, domesticated, skewed, unraveled, the aftertaste of something familiar. Familiar, a skyline, a mountain, a city resting against green. Up close, the sound of ripping seams. Seams. Every decade, foundations waver. A tooth fall and speech lisps. The tongue shifts into bone. Bone. Underneath layers of sediment, jaguar, snake, mother of peril, the forgotten name of the ocean. I don't know if anyone in this Zoom room feels the same way about cockroaches and I do, but I hate cockroaches. And so I wanted to somehow redeem them in the book because I know they are a part of the environment and that we're all connected somehow. So this poem is Catsarida phobia, which is fear of cockroaches. It wasn't so much the smell of rancid oil, but how they starred the ceiling, many-legged nightmares falling on our beds. If I paid attention, I could see their constellations shifting. I call them Azabache, Canela, Luna, Lucero, like the horses we rode at the farm, tame, familiar. Mama scolded me for not killing them, but the sound of death is not meant for every ear. How many times did I panic when wings smacked my body, when legs skittered on an arm or leg? The only time I stepped on a roach, the scene repeated in my head like a horror film. I kept looking at the corpse, unnerved by postmortem spasms. It's easier to run, brush the fear away, but maybe I should have asked them, what is my name? And the companion here is bedtime stories. I don't know if you've heard about witch moths, but they're giant moths. They're usually, I grew up in the tropics, so they're, they get inside the houses and they kind of perch on the wall, like in a corner. And then when you turn off the lights, they start flying around and they kind of bump against everything and they're huge. So this is bedtime stories. Every witch moth has a pact with death. All night she soars towards light, until paralyzed by pleasure, she plummets, bending gravity around the center of her own galaxy. In the stories, bat-shaped wings, the color of the devil's dreams, deprive children of sight. In the morning, a mother finds the witch moth's body splayed, as if waiting to be read. There's something satisfying about open endings, like the story I made up, where you and I find an eagle's feather and grace its barb, fingers flushed with the promise of flight. Okay, I'm fascinated by words, especially the word tongue. That's one of my favorite words in the whole world, both in English and Spanish. So these two poems are about that, about the tongue, about language. And one of them is dedicated to my father. Of mouths and tongues. She lets the tongue, la lengua, out on a leash, then reels her back, an act of love and a habit. Lengua, both muscle, memory, and language, mother tongue, a voice at the back of the mouth. I want to write a book called The Lengua of My Boca, since speaking my lengua is becoming a forgotten art. In the news, they talk about a man found this side of the river, Boca de Rio. He spoke another lengua, was on his back, open mouth, tongue unabridged. And this is Father Lengua. My father speaks English with peros and itos, his pointer fingers crossed one on top of the other to push away mal de ojo. His right hand quickly makes the sign of the cross. He's a master in lip pointing, mouth puckering towards an object or person, no need for translation. I tell him he's a polyglot. His body speaks where words fail. People comment on his accent, mispronounce his name, call him ex-savior, as if he had fallen from grace and could not be redeemed. Xavier, he says, over and over. It's Basque. They think Basque is a painter. When I buy him coffee, I take the cup from the barista's hands and write his name as many times as it takes for all to see. This next set of poems is 5 very short poems. They're called Postcards from Everywhere and Nowhere, and I wrote them during the pandemic, thinking about isolation, not just for me, but just everyone and what we were experiencing. And also thinking about, those of us who couldn't visit family, who maybe, family members who were sick. And I lost my mother during the pandemic too. So that, was part of why these poems came through. Postcards from Everywhere and Nowhere. Dear cousin, I just landed. At the airport, a picture of a ship crowning a wave. A figure on the prow waits, like you on the tarmac, looking somewhere ahead. I waved and you did not wave back. Maybe you couldn't see me. Dear cousin, I chant I'm home every day. How many times will it take to feel it? The monarchs are starting to cocoon. Do you know if, when they transform, they forget their past? Dear cousin, papers are important in this land. My neighbor told me about Chinese paper sons who invented new identities so they could stay. I think of the paper dolls we played with, how we unfolded each tab of the wedding dress and turned it into confetti. Dear cousin, what happens when your genetic code is grafted in 2 languages? Does it mean the patterns never stop shifting? Yesterday, we had an earthquake in San Diego and I heard the earth grinding its teeth, as if to speak. Dear cousin, my son asked if citizen is a foreign word. I was tempted to say yes. I told him there was once a city whose people were not alien. They belonged. Oh, so where do we belong? He asked. So the next 2 poems were inspired by Leonora Carrington's work. I love her work, and for many reasons, but one of the reasons is because she doesn't write in her native language, and I don't either. So I can identify with her on so many levels. This is Coup de Folie 1, after Leonora Carrington. White cokes skulk behind me. I long to ride Pegasus, but he cannot cross the threshold of cardiazol. Unlike the Gorgon, I cannot turn contempt into bread and stone. The coats form a triangle. Take me with them. I want a version of myself that will break the cords, binding my mane and tail to a bed where Perseus places a mirror in front of me, then breaks it. He doesn't understand. I worship myself because I see myself complete. And this is Coup de Folie 2. The day Aunt C went missing, she'd been pulling out her hairs by the roots. Her neighbors found a pill bottle full. She used them to ensnare the voices and confuse them. When I found her, she was living under a bridge, a Janus-headed goddess wearing a mantle and clawing portals in the air. A refuge, she said, palpating the wind. It took 3 nurses to put her in the sanatorio van. The doctors said the tear could never be mended. When I visited Aunt C, she clapped flamenco beats until the horizon gobbled the face of the sun. On her night table, brown hairs tangled among white, grubby pills. So the next 2 poems are the last ones I'm going to read. And the first one is actually the last poem in the book. And the other poem is not in the book. It's a poem I wrote after when I realized where I kind of wanted to go after this. So this is I Am Not Leaving. There is a brittle quality to plant life, a browning that disintegrates to the touch and sticks to the skin. I am not from this land, but off it, the body an unwanted guest. I've learned to ignore the glare of morning, to read the glyphs of ashes, to groan with a coastal oak. During the summer months, the hawk's quiet, and my oral map feels incomplete, disjointed, yet alert to the smallest glimpse of a fir sprouting in lieu of life, or maybe because of it. A farmer once told me about prescribed burns, and before he explained, I thought of a pharmacy prescription no one would refill, which shows how little I know about the subject. I've come to understand that in this land, fire consumes to make space for new language, one I cannot speak, so I touch the surfaces around me, whisper incantations, wave my arms above my head, baptize myself in whiskey until my skin begins to peel like the crimson leaves of a maple, and all that is left is the crusty skin of old earth. Under it, all the words at my disposal. And this last poem is Voyage. I never asked for a tether, and yet here I am, unwinding, my body a restless landmass, boundaries, allegiances, blurring and shifting, to remember what is gone, my homeland, my friend, the archive of my mother's heart. Outside, the ice cracks and groans, a flurry of dendrites scatters every thought. Is there a method to absence? Once, you told me water cleanses and sets you free. I believe you, still do. There's so much I have forgotten, names of places, people, landmarks. ¿Cómo se dice? I asked my brother, but he's forgetting too. Is that what you meant when you wrote to me all those years ago? I'm thinking of you. I hope you find the time to grieve. It's April. It's cold. I miss you. Thank you.
Thank you, Leonora. Thank you for all of those moments preserved or in continuous flow as we think about time and presence and being present and loss. Thank you for all of that. Thank you very much. Our next author will be Kate Wisel. Kate is the author of the book Driving in Cars with Homeless Men, which was winner of the 2019 Drue Heinz Literature Prize, selected by Min Jin Lee. Her fiction can be found in places that include Prairie Schooner, Gulf Coast, and Tin House Online, the Adroit Journal, The Best Small Fictions 2019, Redivider as winner of the Beacon Street Prize, and W.W. Norton's Flash Fiction America, and other places as well. Kate lives in Milwaukee. She works as an assistant to the music critic Jim DeRogatis and teaches at Columbia College, Chicago, and Loyola University. Will you please join me in clapping for Kate?
Thank you so much. Thank you to Simmons, who was such an engaged editor. I was so grateful. And Elizabeth, who I just met but already love. And Leonora, those poems were amazing. I feel like I need to look up that cockroach poem and read it again and again. I worship myself because I see myself complete, will be imprinted in my brain. I'm excited for Lauren to read too. I'm going to read the story that was published in Terrain, Thoughts Going Through My Head When You Arrested Me at Walgreens. The security guard watched me walk out into the sparkling parking lot with the Differin and the polish rammed up my left sweatshirt cuff, the foil blister pack of sleeping pills and the Snickers up my right. Then he called you. You should have seen the way you looked barreling through the disheveled back office with a Glock on your painted on pants, chest pumped with your little life vest, your walkie-talkie garbling nonsense like a high-tech baby monitor. I wanted to be like, who cares? I steal because I'm paid less than you, but it costs more to be me. If you think I feel bad about it, I don't. But I'm no idiot. I knew my rights. Stayed mute while you stood in front of me with your hands on your hips like Buzz Lightyear. I was thinking this guy's probably been in a lot of Walgreens. And he doesn't get laid a lot. But then shit. I looked into your shifty eyes and realized we grew up together. I guess it's trippy, a whole decade and some change since high school. I thought you were thinking the same, but you averted your eyes and smacked your gum. Seized by what? Excitement, arrogance, pity? It occurred to me that maybe you are who you are because you were bullied back then. Your backpack held together by duct tape. They called you duct tape fag. You smelled like pencil shavings, and I heard they made you hold your hand out so they could burn it at a party. You weren't even bad looking, just mopey, a little off. When the security guard left me in your charge for a second, why'd you hesitate? I turned to face the bulletin board so you could cuff me, all the store's victims staring back at me in their red vests and unresponsive to treatment acne. Then we walked down the vacuumed aisles. Walgreens, which by the way has theft built into their budget. The CEO of Walgreens is a Republican who vacations in the sideshells while his employees eat dinner from cans. I know because I've seen Undercover Boss. Those drugstore bulbs lit strips of ads, and what I wanted you to understand was that every pixelated model's gaze was directed towards me. How they chin their shoulders with digitally altered lips, their enamel falsely intact, their saturated hair blown back with an obscene amount of volume. Never mind the sprawl of cosmetics pressing in from either side, lip gloss, lip liner sharpeners, lipstick to brighten your smile, sponges for concealer, foundations in every skin shade, plus primers to blur your face, clear eyebrow gel, eyeshadow palettes, eyelash curlers, mascara, eyeliner to intensify your stare, bronzer for a sun-kissed glow and powder for a sheer complexion, matte blush, liquid blush, gel blush, powder blush, shimmer blush, glittery blush, tinted blush for a post-sex flush, nail filers and polish ranging in color from starter wife to fairy tale to just an illusion, cotton swabs, nail polish remover, potions, lotions, dyes, combs, elastic, scrunchies, clips, picture machines as large as photo booths, rifling out designer makeup at the denser airports. Every billboard on every highway aimed to destroy every woman who speeds past. Not even the tampons in the dispensers in the bathrooms are free anymore. Even when we bleed, we pay for it. Can you name an arena where men are expected to buy as much crap with the exclusion of protein powder and boner pills? Men go to Supercuts for a buzz, hand the barber $15, while women fidget in salon chairs, scalp singeing under twisted tinfoil like a satellite that a homeless man in New York City sculpted, wasting hours upon hours of their day when they could be working, earning, saving. And don't get me started on the vitamins, rows upon rows, just so we can live longer to buy more stuff. So what? I steal fish oil pills to glow from the inside out. Shape at the newsstand, mine. Grapes at the supermarket, free. Pens at the gynecologist, yanked from their chains, their silken, fast-drying ink. In the parking lot, you went to open the door, and for a second I was like, chivalry's not dead? Then I was just in the back seat of a cop car, buckling the fat, old-school seatbelt, the kind that hung loose in my grandfather's Buick. You remember that guy? As you started the car, I thought of all the things I'd ordered online: lace-up heels, an Electroid neck massager, moon juice serum tucked under tissue paper, bathed in confetti, the homeopathic-looking vial, sleek design like bleeding gasoline in a puddle, pathetic 5-pound weights, 15-pound weights, fingerless gloves, gloves I wore as I dialed the 1-800 number to claim they never arrived, the money tossed back into my account like a fish. I steal because money isn't real. It is an exchange of energy, and I'm after what I'm owed. Because my mom cleaned houses and my dad left when I was 3. And I saw her do it first, a lady's gold chain from a silver perfume tray. I stole her daughter's loaded Pez dispenser the following Monday. Because I wanted that grape tape gum that disintegrated on your tongue and the hairbrush that promised to detangle without damaging. Because when I was a kid, my mom bartended at Sal's. So every weekend she dropped Ricky and me off next door at our grandparents'. You know, because you lived in that lit windowed ranch across the street. You know my grandfather, you know the things Ricky said when I got hammered at that barbecue. You remembered that barbecue? How it goes is you buy a tub of global anti-aging cell power moisturizer for $95, slather your skin for 3 months till it's reflective as glass. Then you fill the tub with Pond's and get your money back. No questions asked, just how's your day going, or why didn't the product work for you? One time I bought a bottle of Chardonnay at City Market, then sat in my car and thought twice, marched back in and claimed the bottle was missing from the bag. Like that, 2 bottles of Chardonnay on the passenger seat as I sped, mistaking the blast of heat on my cheek for the sun, green lights collecting overhead like so much luck. Cryptic calls were coming through on your radio, and the only thing between us was that bulletproof Kevlar. I caught you glancing at me in the rear view, then heard your blinker and realized you were only trying to turn. Have you ever felt like you're frozen on the tracks and there's a whistle blowing through your head, and if you don't move, you'll die? Ever thought of how Bill Clinton was a good guy and Monica Lewinsky our national horror? You banged a left and we drove past the squat, depressing building that is Framingham High, where the punks used to come down so hard from grinds they'd split their skateboards on curbs. Ricky had concussions, the scars to prove it. And you remember Jay? Or that's what he told us to call him. That sophomore history teacher. He used to keep me after class. This was before we started with all the emails, or as he called it, our correspondence. He'd flex his French at me, call what we had a pas de deux. I just wrote back, fuck you. He'd kick his feet up on the desk, our eye contact abnormal, like we were speaking through cigar smoke. He'd call me little girl, so I'd say, restrain yourself. And he'd say, when I show you restraint, you'll know it. And I'd say, is that a threat or a promise? The first taste of trouble is like bread. If you eat it, you're gonna want more. But I'll rewind. That summer before high school, I'd squint to answer the door in my messy bun and Ricky's boxers, the sun melting the clumps of gel in your frosted tips. Those 3 frantic seconds when we could have spoken, but we didn't. Then you disappeared to the cool, damp basement to play Call of Duty with Ricky. Before dark, you two would be in our grandparents' driveway, spinning your bike's chain with grease to keep the parts moving. I'd be in the side yard on the diving board, my stomach slapping the surface, the cheap aqua water crawling with dead spiders. I liked to hold my breath in the chlorine for as long as I could, because the women in my family cleaned when they were angry, and the men killed time draining Budweisers. And at night, I could feel the bats flying over my head in that above-ground pool. I guess I've been testing God. I'm calling that 1-800 number to claim the item never arrived, because they have to apologize. And even though I know it's a script, It kind of helps me. But then I met Christina. You remember Christina? We'd be in Rampage at the mall looking painfully sweet save for our eyeliner, chokers, and our garbage bag tans. We'd stuff tank tops into a JanSport, then have the audacity to ask for 3 toothpick samples of orange chicken at the food court. Were you at the talent show, that time we danced to Independent Women by Destiny's Child? It was amazing. When she went left, I went right. She wore the black tank top, I wore the white. Before that, 4th grade, that winter break, Ricky and I went to Florida and everything changed. Our grandparents took us to Disney, where we stayed in a condo with pineapple curtains and a couch with cup holders, a preview of Hell's Furnishings, and it was the first time I made myself throw up. I wanted to be so skinny no one could see me, wanted to surf at Daytona Beach, but choked so hard on salt water when I couldn't get up on a monster wave. And you remember my grandfather, how he taught you to mow the lawn when your dad got sick. My grandfather's shirt tucked into his shorts, his bicep tattooed with a mutilated USN and a faded green bald eagle. You remember what Ricky said at the barbecue, what he did to me. I told my grandmother the first time it happened. She cleared my plate, said, let's just keep this between us. That night, she made me pray the rosary. All she cared about was Jesus, not seatbelts, not sunscreen. I loved her with a homesick dependency, but she used to whip combs through my snarled hair and said I needed to try harder to talk to God. On the phone, she says, I'll pray for you. And I say, I'll pray for you, but I don't mean what she means. So these days, I never call her back. I steal because God's not watching, idiot. I steal because I kind of want him to watch. Because they're finally admitting aliens exist. Because wildfires. And I liked Mary Magdalene better. Despised and resented the fact that something impossible was growing inside Mary.
Kate, what a voice. Thank you so much for reading that piece to us. Such a critique of the materialism that is our present life. Thank you so much for that. Our final reader today will be Lauren Camp. Lauren is the 2nd Poet Laureate of the state of New Mexico. She's the author of 7 books, including Took House from Tupelo Press, and she has 2 brand new collections, one of them out just a week ago. An Eye in Each Square from River Books, and Worn Smooth Between Devourings from NYQ Books. Her honors include the Dorset Prize and finalist citations for the Arab American Book Award, the Housatonic Book Award, and New Mexico, Arizona Book Award. Her work has been translated into Mandarin, Turkish, Spanish, French, and Arabic. Will you please join me in clapping for Lauren Camp?
Thank you, Elizabeth. Thank you, Simmons, for putting this event together, for holding the space for terrain.org and everything it does. Kate, your story leaves me breathless. It's very hard to follow you. And Leo, thank you for your gorgeous poems. I think I'm going to read a little bit from each of the new books and maybe another poem from that. I'm going to start with the poem from the start of Worn Smooth Between Devourings. It's called Accidental Singing. All my tremolos rise past midnight, and I carry them down the hill to my foggy little corner where I store some of my disorder. Standing on the periphery of light like this, I am able to think we go on from our addresses, absorbed into what is less like confinement and more our frail territories. We're glad to be reminded to succeed in our staying, to sing the inevitable echoes. Such an album of prayers I have carried across the country, from my lonely New York into Boston with its chosen darkness. Outside right now in the weighted desert with its endless edges, I arrange all my histories. And the moon is eternal. I wait for it to become common. And while I wait, I whisper a song I learned from a woman in a slow office, 23rd floor. A woman without features, just a white headscarf. She knew grief, but didn't know she was teaching me a guarantee for getting through every next day. Some words in some order, those words I could keep until I found my way home. The sound as steering, always beside me. So I live in the high desert of New Mexico, and this book is very much about the beautiful, incredible things about being in a desert climate, as well as some of the more difficult things. And that includes increasing drought and increasing wildfires. This poem was published in terrain.org, and it is, in a way, a found poem. It's called Days of the Fire of Fires. We said, here too. We said no power. We said, oh no, said many prisms of pity, conclusion. We said those short and small messages that mean terrible, horrifying. Can't believe it, we said, awful, and thinking of you again and again. We said wow, and OMG, and nightmare, and we said have a plan, said love, and worried, and hope you're okay. We said plague, and go, or don't. We said no clearing of sky and more than a week. We said vast mist, the color of rust. We said as if refusing what can be undone. We said forest and town and erasure and species. Some said we are still okay. We said sunrise and ash. We said same here, or we said never. She said trying to breathe. The winds rape on in the unfocused light. We said it is, it isn't. He said the full coming down, the coiling around, unreal. We said ravaged, so very, I'm so sorry, and so, same here, we said, or yes, or no. Tragic, we said, look at it now. We said this morning, said we are settled much as we can, said our house, or the neighbors, everything, everyone. Likely to get worse, we said, we heard, the end of the world. How are you? Pray, we said in a whisper. The valley is heavy. We drove through, could not. I'm going to read a poem called Dear Desire. Dear Desire. I don't know how I built this need, where to hold it. I cannot explain why the wind inhabits my body, and I would like to see more gold leaf. I would like everyone to see it. Last night, we watched another movie in which love is a threshold, and the city around it, deep snow. What I mean is, I'm lucky. I post magnets on my fridge, small prints stuck on a Housatonic grocery list, tinfoil, cauliflower, salsa, a whole journey of feeding my family. Those clutching reminders with devotional practice. Mornings, my husband grinds the coffee with pro-grade earmuffs on. He wears a blue shirt again. Another day, dressing in distance. He watches me linger beside the sayings, something to use between the world and my will. What do we know of contentment? My husband is exhausted by the unavailable trouble I crave. My magnets tell me to expect nothing, to never stop wanting. They repeat every day. After this, he sorts the laundry. Darks, lights, blues. These are the rooms of our house. So I wrote the poem over a very long period of time. The book. Some of the poems were written during some of the very difficult times in our country, though maybe that's starting to seem impossible to say anymore. There were so many tragic events and terrifying events, and this poem holds a little of that. It's called White Chalet Birdhouse, and I've never read it aloud. White Chalet Birdhouse. Where do you house your worry? At 4 a.m., I'm awake to the surly news kicked up in the dark. I'm alert to the wind that keeps situating. The season I've grown to detest now grows wiry all year, and every hour I am reduced to its lacing. A falcon stands guard, toothing the air from its perch on a dead tree to the east. I have so much work to do on the irrational, brutal future of the world in these murky hours, work that never is needed or finished. Instead, I begin studying theorems, blink through the language of lemmas and identities, and bother the buttons that break me from such propositions. Maybe math is not where I need to be. I used to be grateful for proof, but now want something less narrow to settle in. Do you worry? I've been going to friends' houses and looking devoted for radiance, sitting at their tables in their barns, running my knees against their rivers and petting their turkeys, checking where they are safe, what is lucky, and what might be broken to sorrow. On the web, I find a site with multi-part birdhouses, rooms to move into. Can I say housing keeps me up? I read of the stabbing in Portland as people were traveling home. Then the busful of Coptic Christians in Egypt en route to the lodging of their hearts. I cannot sleep through any more slaying. The birdhouses are all white with shingled pine roof and windows and other little advantages. A porthole, a door. A house is for safety, for nesting, for the songs of comfort. I read and read through the stars, and the balcony of light outside turns beautiful, and the wind is now easy as a spoon and not writhing, and the nerd clock on the wall plans its way forward with equations I'll never understand, with time that will always be indefinite, that might even, when I'm not looking, escape. The oldest poems in this book take place beside the Atlantic Ocean. They're from 2004. I had the chance to spend 2 months in Provincetown, Massachusetts. I had never lived beside the ocean before for any extended period of time. And it was extremely interesting to get to do that. The poem is called Face Circle Abundant. My friend Virginia said I would miss the dry air in those months between places. At home, my apple tree had toothed to the earth, limbs already browning. At home, a red-faced sky. Everything was anchored, fluted by light and my fingerprints. In this cottage, I found my smell between broken utensils and the slap of glue in the basement. It wasn't that I wanted to be alone, just that time had been given amid plank and dunes. Just that I needed the underbrush, the container, blossoms of observation needed to aspire to the wisdom of waiting. I kept an old jacket and a flower pot and a field bag with a toothless zipper, wrote words on pieces of cardboard. monochrome, face, circle, abundant. I studied the shore, its hem at the sand. Perhaps I was eluding myself, a woman wrapped in 3 coats beside multiple rough ridges of ocean. When I wasn't apprehending the deep sink and succession of water, I trusted daylight until that too dimmed. A quiet emerged through my palms. It was sewn or written down, which made it less singular. Down the road, the ocean yanked from its cashmere center to write rust on old objects. Waves spun, slobbered, disappeared. All that weight weeping onto shore. My friend Virginia is usually right, especially since she moved away from the desert. But I was making a language each time the ocean shouted and bulged. And all the mornings and twilight, I looked through its doorway and listened to perfect circles bend without breaking. And I want to end with one poem from An Eye in Each Square. This has been a very weird, very busy year for me, but also weird because because I had 2 books come out within a 3-month period, and I've been describing it as having twins 3 months apart, and trying to take care of both of them at the same time. An Eye in Each Square is about it follows the artist Agnes Martin. It's nurtured by her paintings, and her paintings are very empty. If you don't know them, they're very quiet. I followed, for the years of writing this book, I followed the line that she pulled across her canvases, a horizontal line mostly, or the spaces above and below that line. So I'm going to end with this poem called To Fail and Fail and Still Go On. Sunrise, tight roads hew to a line of Sitka, gatekeepers, gray scaffold. Agnes Martin burned her paintings. For 20 years she painted, and for 20 years she made them ash. Someone in the kitchen called this ambition. Tonight we build a fire, sit on wooden chairs, a wire bench. Where a mouth might enter, one solitude follows another, ready to loosen. A man smokes a cigar, fingers the fume. In the pit, flames bend and funnel. I say very little. Watch the red sparks spit. Bright scatterings. What if ambition is stopping? How immediate it feels to scent the air. Thank you.
Thank you, Lauren. Such beautiful poems spanning 2 decades, at least 2 decades. And all 3 of you, this has just been, I think this has been an arresting reading. I'd like to start with a question for all 3 of you while other people are putting on their thinking caps. So this is for all 3 of you. As I was listening, I realized that I was being reminded by a line from the poet Tess Gallagher. Not just a line, I think it's the title of an essay that she wrote some time ago called A Poem is a Time Machine. And I don't think that's only about the poets tonight. I think that's very much about Kate's story as well, which is when the line came to me. At first, listening to Leo, we were constantly living in a moment, and we were drawn into these little exquisite points of contemporaneity. And then with Kate's story, we were in a very limited narrative scope of the arrest, which of course is the stop, right? To be arrested is to be stopped. And yet it was constantly being steeped in all of the backstory, all of the memories of the way these people's lives had intertwined much earlier. And there was a line in one of your earlier poems, Lauren, "The moon is eternal. I wait for it." And then coming to proclaim that these are difficult, terrifying times. And now I'm paraphrasing, I'm not quoting anymore, but they're difficult, terrifying times, which is less possible to say, perhaps, as time goes on, to suggest that times are not plural anymore, that there's this kind of metastatic blur of one's experience of time. So anyway, this is all of my just response to the profundity of time in listening to all of you. Could I ask any of you, all of you, just to respond a little bit and what you're feeling about time right now? Kate, you're unmuting, please.
I do this all the time. I'm reminded by a Brenda Shaughnessy poem, actually about a time machine, but one of the lines is, "The past is so horribly fast." And yeah, I think about that line all the time, about like how time is experienced forward and backward at the same time.
I didn't know that line. Thank you for that.
Oh, I know that poem. I'm going to go back to it. Glad to hear that. I have actually a lot of thoughts about time, though I can be quite brief about them. I think poetry is incredibly good at holding present and past, or I don't know, maybe present and future, or past and future. But for me, present and past at the same time. That's a huge part of the genre for me. But also, you know, I've done a lot of thinking and writing about astronomy because of a bunch of very lucky opportunities, which means my sense of time has suddenly gone from my past or my ancestors' past to a very deep, very distant past. And that's been incredibly interesting to think through, or even just to try to get my head around that. You know, what is time even?
Wonderful, thank you.
Yeah, I love both of those comments. I keep thinking about being able to stop time, and how I find that books represent a period of time for the writer that remains there, sort of like end stopped in a way. But then when we read the poems, we're reliving them in the present. And so they take on a different meaning according to the time we're living in that present. I don't know if I'm being super complicated, but I'm just thinking about this relationship between past and present and future, right? Because we can't imagine what's going to happen when those poems are there, and then reading them in the future, and how they will be affecting our sense of time then.
Thank you all. Simmons is inviting more commentary from the assembled audience.
And remember, I said that you are a really beautiful, engaged audience, so no pressure.
Well, I'm seeing an awful lot of love. Clearly, so many wonderful lines that people are extracting from our auditory experience and then transcribing into the chat. We'll keep all of those. Thoughts? If not fully formed questions, observations?
Has anybody identified the tree behind Leo?
Mm-hmm.
We're trying to figure that out. Actually, I think we had the architect come to Tucson and who did design that house there in the trees. It's in Northern California. Okay, but enough about me. We must have some other great questions for these amazing, beautiful readers this evening. Yes?
Okay, I'm going to jump right in then and hog it. Lauren, I'm so excited to hear you talking about engaging with truly, truly deep time in thinking about astronomy. No one was here when we were talking amongst ourselves, and I was yammering on about the equinox. There in New Mexico, are you doing things with ancestral Puebloan time watching and sun watching? Where are you going with some of this thought? Please tell us a little bit about where your work is taking you.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. I would love to do that, but that's not what I'm doing. Last year, I had the chance to spend a month as astronomer in residence at the Grand Canyon. And I went not as an astronomer, but as a poet, which was extraordinary, honestly, was truly extraordinary to be there in a place of pristine natural darkness and to learn more about what can be seen, and also to realize how many people don't ever see it unless they go to places like Grand Canyon. From there, this year I went and spent a couple of weeks learning from the astronomers at Loyola Observatory, which was a whole different form of trying to understand, and a much more difficult form of trying to understand deep time, because I was only seeing it through a microscope, through a telescope, or through their data, for the most part. And that was very hard on my thinking, on my brain, to figure it out, but also extremely appealing. I actually recommend that any writer take on a subject that feels utterly untouchable. It's an interesting challenge.
Thank you. I'm going to dive back into a comment that came in much earlier in the chat. And Leo, as you were first reading your companion poems, someone put into the chat that it was what a great idea, loving the concept of the poems sort of being in dialogue with one another. And of course, the fact that there's that dual lingualism is so much a part of your imagination, right? And just your concept of the tongue in your work. Would you care to talk to us any more about this as a teaching tool or as a self prompt? Anything? I mean, I assume that a great many in our audience are practicing writers, and could you give us like a tiny masterclass?
I don't know if I can do that, but I'll try to answer the question as best as I can. So this is something I thought about when I was finishing up the book. I had, it was mostly done, but I talked to the poet Tiana Clark, and she was telling me how when she wrote her book, she was thinking about poems in conversation with each other. And so she was like, look at the holes, look at the blanks and see what's happening. Because I was stuck. I didn't know. I had some old poems that I didn't really want in the book, and they ended up in the book. because I changed the format. But I always think about connections, always. And I don't know if it's because, you know, 2 cultures, 2 languages, or more than 2 languages. But I'm always thinking about how the collective voices within a book, and not just like within the book, but I don't think that we write books in isolation. I think we are part of a bigger community, world, etc. Like, I don't think my book could have been possible without everyone else cheering me on, without the publisher, without, you know, the person who did the cover art and all that. And so I think when I think about companion poems, I'm thinking about how are we in conversation with ourselves and how are we in conversation with others. And one exercise that I like to do is that I like to look at someone's poem, especially someone who writes very different from me, and then how can I respond to that? Not to the whole poem necessarily, but like maybe a line or maybe a word or maybe a theme within the poem. So that's one little prompt that you can do if you want to kind of challenge yourself to go a little farther.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you for that. Some questions are coming in for Kate as well. One from Pam Houston, which is whether Kate knew where that story was going to wind up when she started it, or if it wrote its way there. And I think that's a bit related to a previous question that came in as well about what inspired the story, and perhaps how the story can then take hold of inspiration and go on its own. Kate, would you talk to us a bit? I cannot hear you.
I said, I'm so happy Pam's here. I didn't know she was here. And Pam changed my life, and she changes everybody's life that she comes into contact with in a drastic way for me. And thank you for those questions. What inspired? I was thinking about a lot of things at once. I was thinking about stores and surveillance and capitalism. And I was also thinking about drugs and astronomy, and how we could access memories or places that aren't even our own, like going to outer space if you do a drug. And I was thinking about theft, and theft is up. And I was thinking about why someone would steal. And so that led me to writing this story about someone who was stealing. And the question you always have to ask a character is like, why are you doing what you're doing? And it just occurred to me that when you steal, you feel like something's been taken from you, but that thing that's been taken from you is immaterial. So you're just feeling like you want your rights back. And so I guess that's what inspired the story. And then I didn't know that the police officer was going to be in any way related to the character until I realized their relationship had to be, it was so much about being seen and not being seen at the same time. And I wondered if the police officer had seen her or knew her. So it made sense to me. And the ending, yeah, I didn't realize that she would become ashamed of herself in a certain way, but I was happy to see that her emotion changed.
Thank you. And Simmons is telling folks, if you're not paying attention in the chat, in fact, Kate didn't read the full ending of this story. So tune in to terrain.org and read the whole thing for sure. Simmons, do we have time for another question, or shall we thank these gentle people for coming?
Well, you are the moderator, Elizabeth, so I think whatever you would like to do.
Okay, there's another question in the chat for Leo that I think we really ought to give her a chance to talk to. Related to time, can you talk about how you draw from ancestors, memory, traditions, and how that shapes your writing and voice in the present time?
Thank you for that question. Hi, Kathy. Let's see. So I'll give the quick answer because I know probably folks are tired. But my family. Okay, growing up, my family kind of idealized our Spanish heritage, and everything had to be related to that. So even like some of our traditions and the cooking, all that stuff. But then about maybe 15 years ago, I found out that my great-grandmother was Native. And I grew up, knowing her and sharing a lot of time with her, but it never occurred to me that that was a possibility. I look very different from the rest of my family. And so I never felt identified with that identity. So since then, I have been sort of exploring that part of myself and remembering a lot of what my grandmother and great-grandmother taught me about plants, about talking to the plants. I remember when I had my first child, I would tell him, like, look at, Brother Bear over there or Sister Bunny. And I didn't know where that was coming from. And now I realize that it's all within me. And so all of those traditions come through in the work, especially now, as I think about also my relationship to land, to motherland, and to this land that I now consider also a mother in some ways, and what mothering is. And so I'm trying to make a lot of connections with that. And actually, by making those connections, I'm also finding myself and reconnecting to a part of myself that was not accessible to me before. So hopefully that makes sense.
Terrific. Yes, thank you. Gentle people, you are a beautiful audience. And a kind and generous one, too. Please, let's have another round of applause for our authors. Thank you so much. Lauren, Kate, Leo, thanks so much for giving us your work and your evening. Anyone want to save the chat? It's pretty smart. And we'll see you back here in another month for another Terrain.org reading.
Thank you all so much. And Elizabeth, let's give a round of applause for Elizabeth, our wonderful moderator as well. Thank you, darling, for that. Yeah, so thanks again to Lauren and Kate and Leo for such a beautiful reading. And thank you all for joining us this evening. And, keep an eye out for the online auction and fundraiser coming soon. Thanks all. Have a wonderful evening.